Welcome once again, everyone. Have a seat, sit down, let's have a little conversation and selfologize today with intermediate selfology. This is yours truly, Tristan McGough, and today we are going to deal with what does Om mean? Sounding the summit of self. You'll remember, perhaps long, long ago, when I first introduced the omniversal model, or Om. And I did this for purposes of description and explanation, and as we've learned over the last couple of sessions, that helps with the interpretation that one undertakes when they renotate something in their own mind while things are being said in any given moment. So, let us use the awakening mantra. I am conscious of being conscious, and enter into the domain where we are reflectively aware of the meanings that I am talking about and that you are interpreting in your own mind at this very given moment. So I use Om, or the universal model, in order to break apart ideas as well as to integrate them so that one can have the larger, the big picture. And as you'll notice, in the middle of this sphere, I have an octahedron, a three-dimensional representation there in 2 dimensions of an octahedron, which I find is beautifully symmetrical in terms of eidetic tensegrity. That is, for taking ideas, breaking them apart, and showing how it is that they in fact interrelate with one another. And you can get finer and finer on all of these aspects. And of course, I often do. I interrelate the Ausic octahedron, that is the octahedron of everything, with nested octahedrons, such as inside of this macrocosmic octahedron would be the microcosmic octahedron. Inside that would be the minocosmic octahedron, etc. But at all of it would be a point of consciousness. And remember, a point has no dimensions. It is afinite. However, along the axis of identity, you flip this over, it looks like just a circle here with a point, but when you expand it out through an octahedron, you have an axis, and that's the axis of identity. No matter where you are in the octahedron, it is identical to itself. And I utilize the faculties of experience by a subsphere, if you will, within the larger sphere, and that has a radial vector of experience. That is, there's a direct connection, an epistemic relation between the subject and between whatever it entertains by way of an object. You'll recall that I have utilized this in terms of saying, well, you have a point of consciousness and it has 10 dimensions. These 10 dimensions are interdependent, and we've spoken of them before. And as a selfologist, you want to ask yourself, what indeed are these 10 dimensions? And we'll visit them a little later. But the idea being that the various dimensional self, the 10 dimensions, operate in 3 different spheres: a finite sphere, a transfinite sphere, and an infinite sphere. And I've regulated this in terms of a depiction by way of the Om, that omniversal model, of indicating that within the human being there are those 3 aspects too: the microcosmic self, each of us, are more than just a empiric self. That is, this somatic self of mind, emotions, and body, all my finite experiences. I have concrete thoughts, I have specific emotions, I have particular activities that I have within a very finite interactive, inter-objective world. But the human being, in terms of cognology, the study of consciousness, is much more than just that personality. We are as well the solar self, that is the epistic self. And that's been called many things throughout the years, including the soul and psyche and the transcendental self. Whereas the empiric self is often referred to as the empirical self, as the gnostic self, in terms of the spirit, is referred to as the transcendent self. Transcendental being that which is transfinite. So here you have the finite, transfinite, and infinite aspects of self, which is related to the pneuma, as the spiritual self, and the somatic self is the persona, as the experience, the empirical self, that breaks everything up into these finite experiences. But as a soul, as a psyche, as you well know, you have a thread of consciousness upon which all these beads of finite experience are strung. And that is the experiencing psyche. We have progressed through intermediate selfology to the point where we saw the integration of these three different foci of consciousness. It's a way your consciousness focuses in the world to see finite things, or the transfinite things of your inner scape, or the infinite things of the greater scape. But along all of that, as we've made mention, and as we have discovered, there are 7 levels of identity and identification of who I am. My cognos and ontos. Who is my cognos? The fact that I am, that I have being, that is my ontos, my being. So this is essential identity and existential identification. And we have the 7 different levels that we went through before. There's the I am, the I thou, the I me, the I the other, the I us, and the I it. As we take it from the top, the I is as consciousness. That's what it is. The I, the identity, is consciousness and pure being. It's all one and the same. Sat Chitananda. It's the whole idea behind that Trinitarian concept, that philosophic concept that groups things together in terms of a greater meaning for understanding and wisdom. So, the I is consciousness. The I am is I as universal consciousness that's unlimited. The I thou, I'm transpersonal, unitive consciousness. Some pronounce it unitive. I me, I am subjective consciousness. At any moment, I can reflect and say, I'm aware of being aware. That's the I-me relation. The I other is I am an objective outer consciousness. I look upon the outside world as objects. They're out there. I define them. I define trees. I define even abstract objects. They're out there. Even philosophers have debated whether there are such independent things as universal ideas, as archetypal essences, because they're out there. That's that I other dimension in which identity does a role of identification. And what's identifying here is the monastic plane, just like here it's the egoic plane, etc. So on the I, us, that's the kamic or astral plane. That's where you feel that I'm an interdependent, intersubjective, shared consciousness. I have a consciousness like them. This can be everything from familial to a tribal mentality, etc. And then there's the I it. I'm an inter-objective, transactional object in the world. I'm subject to physical laws of causation, etc., etc. But now remember, as St. Francis of Assisi said, what we are looking for is what is looking. Omnism adds or revises, sublates, and says what we are looking for is who is looking. This who is the structure on the various 7 planes of reality. We've taken that and looked at it in terms of a pyramid of selfhood, in which that axis of identity sees that there is an arena of identification through the various structures, from I-it to I-us. You I-us all the way up. You'll notice that as we rise through the physical, and I give the Sanskrit term below, for those of you who are familiar with Theosophy or so many of the other New Age dispensations, all the way up through emotive, manus and mentive, and the egoic, the ahamkara, and the intuitive, also called the buddhi, the I-thou relationship, where exists pathos and logos, and bios as well as ethos. And then the cognal, that's the level of I am. That's the level of pure Shiva Shakti integration in terms of consciousness and being at one. And above that is the Brahman, the Ayano level of the one self, here represented as Om. I pronounce it as Om. That is the word. The symbol Om is this. The pronunciation Om is A-U-M. Aum. It is Aum. And on the lips, vibration of the head. And that represents 3 different elements that have been spoken of in terms of what Om is as a symbol. Now, this is the Sanskrit word for Om, and I'm certain that you can find many interpretations of the various elements. Now, as true to form, we went through the various ideas of what a notation is, and that a notation is a term that opens to a thought, and that they are linked through convention. And we each learned the mental association of that conventional word with a connotative meaning and our own personal meanings that we went into before. However, the symbol Om is more than that. It's actually a sigil. Now, what is a sigil? It's actually where it's a semblant. It looks like Om. It looks like reality. It has a part of that. It also has a part where it is a symptom. This is a symptom of being. And it also is a symbol that is we ascribe to it various meanings. We say this means this. For instance, this could mean the Dharmakaya, and this Sambhogakaya, and this the Nirmanakaya. And that would be perhaps a Buddhist interpretation of an ancient Sanskrit Vedic symbol. But there are many interpretations that are given by Sanskrit scholars in terms of these relating to the 4 levels of consciousness. And there's the waking, and there's the sleeping or dreaming element, and then there's the sleeping, and then there's the highest Turiya, which is beyond, it's transcendental. Well, in terms of utilizing this as a sigil, as having a unique meaning, where there are all 3 of those aspects together, of it being a symbol and a semblant and something that is a symptom, in terms of taking selfology and breaking it down, according critical function of philosophy, right? And then putting it all together in terms of a worldview, yes? And then in terms of experience it as understanding what actually this is that we're talking about. Well, what we're talking about in terms of giving the connotative meaning of according to Selfology, is that the tribhava, that is everything that there is consisting of the triverse, the tricosm, and the triloka, which we went into before. The triverse, of course, is the paraverse, which is beyond all differentiation. It's unnameable, it is undividable, it is unlimited as one. There's the multiverse, which are all the various possibilities of potentiating that paraverse. And then there is our universe, which is one of those potentiations that have become actualized. And so we have our own entities in a causal framework that doesn't interact with other multiverses, because we have our own causality, our own causal framework. We have our own energy, our own space, our own time. And that's what makes us a universe, an enclosed universe. So that is represented down here as this entire, looking like a 3 in 1. All right, that's the universe. The multiverse, in the interpretation of Selfology, is this. It begins from nothing and it extends theoretically infinitely. And then there's the paraverse, which we can represent as a single dot, but here it is beautifully represented as the 4 sides of what consciousness essentially is: willing, thinking, doing, and feeling. And that's all part of the intuiting of the paraverse. So the 3 of those are encapsulated in the very first phoneme of the mantra Om. Not the word is Om. So when you're talking about Om, you can utilize that. However, when you utilize it as a mantra, it's pronounced with the 3 separate phonemes of A, U, M. And that Ah, when sounding, is all 3 of these at once. It's the paraverse, the multiverse, and the universe, all within Ah, right there. When you move into the Ooh, that is the tricosm of the macrocosm, the microcosm, and the minicosm. And we experience the macrocosm in terms of the universal abstractions and the universals that apply to us all. We share all of that together. The experia are our particular notions and feelings and thoughts that we have as elements of experience as a living microcosm. And the particulars that we have of any given thing, even of a thought or of a feeling, it's composed of microcosmic substance, of substance that shares the same triversal being as us. However, in terms of the tricosm, it is our servant as we are servants of the macrocosm. And that, of course, is all part of the universe, of which the other part are the 3 realms that we, as beings, doesn't matter, macrocosmic, microcosmic, or minicosmic, as beings, we are sharing one holos, one whole of the triloka. That is the formless world of spirit, the form world of the soul, and the desire world of soma. And in this desire world of soma, we have those 3 states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping, or deep sleep, that is occurring. So, Ah is the triverse, U is the tricosm, these 3, which is the whole universe, and triloka is our special experience as conscious beings within that omniverse. Now, having so said that, we come to another notation, and the last for today. We speak of the full self. And here the terms that we are using are compounded in order to create a phrase, the full self. Now, What is the full self? Is that the independent thing I was referring to before? No, it is not anything other than a term that refers to the other 7 pristine cognitions of self. So instead of saying the 7 pristine cognitions of self, I say the full self, and I'm referring to all of it, whether it is the all-encompassing or all self, whether it's the all equalizing, there's only one, the one self as the aeon, or whether it's the real self, right, mirrors things as they are, whether it's finite being, pure being, conscious being, or non-being. It tells the reality as it is, or the whole self, the cosmos, as we were referring to it before, as the all-inclusive with all the various elements of the tribhava, or the conscious self, which is the all-discerning, and that is, it has an unbroken continuum of consciousness in which it is ever expanding as a psychonaut into new unactualized dimensions. And to the pilgrim, the one who starts off, there is no self until that experienced psychonautical self of the self taking itself by its own bootstraps and moving up the mountain toward the summit of self. And finally, as Buddha pointed out, there is no self that is not self-mastered. You cannot be servant of anything if you are a true self. If you are a true self, you have mastery. And that is what Paralsa is, as the all-accomplishing, pristine cognition of self. So, until we meet again, behave when you must. Be good whenever you can, but above all else, be your full self.